Good evening, members, and welcome to the Epping Forest Local Council's Liaison Committee.
Evening, Chairman.
Good evening.
Nice to see everyone. I will start with a webcasting introduction, but if I could ask you to actually mute yourselves, that would be excellent. Then there will be no background noises. I would like to remind everyone present that this meeting will be broadcast live to the internet and will be capable of repeated viewing by such third parties or another use by such third parties. Therefore, by participating in this virtual meeting, you are consenting to being filmed and to the possible use of those images and sound recordings for webcasting and training purposes. If members of the public do not wish to have their image captured, they should ensure that their video setting throughout the virtual meeting is turned off and set to audio only. In the event the technical difficulties interrupt the virtual meeting that cannot be overcome, I may need to adjourn the meeting. Thank you. Item 2, apologies for absence.
We have had apologies from parish councils, which is Buckhurst Hill, Epping, Morton Bobbingworth and the Lavers, Nasing, Ongar, Roydon, Stapleford, Tawney, and from Councillor Perkins from Thaden Boys. Oh, and Councillor Rolfe. Apologies.
Okay, thank you very much.
Sorry, can I interrupt? I'm from Ongar and I haven't got I'm actually from Ongar. I'm an Ongar Town Councillor. So
Okay.
thank you.
Could we have your name, please?
It's Christine Feetham. Can you change that?
You will be recorded in the minutes.
Okay, thank you very much.
Lovely. Yes, it is changed. Lovely, thank you. Okay, well, item 3 is minutes of previous meeting. Now, we had an extraordinary committee meeting held on the 28th of January 2021, and I would like to ask if members agree that the minutes were a correct image of that meeting. And we can agree the minutes, please.
Great.
Okay, thank you. Now, members, we had in that extraordinary meeting, we did confirm and agreed the minutes of the 7th of September meeting. Nevertheless, there were some action points, and the officers very kindly brought them back again. So you are all aware that they have been given proper responses from the service managers. So we take it that all these items, about A, issues raised by the unauthorized travel encampments, the housing and any other business minute, item B, local government reorganization, and then item C, digital bodies. All these were given responses and they are included in your agenda on pages 2 and 3. Now, if we have no further questions, we can continue. It is really mainly so you are aware that the responses were given and to be noted, really. So if I hear anyone, any questions, then I could continue the meeting. Right, I cannot see any hands at all, so I will take it as noted and we'll continue the meeting. Thank you. So we go to item 4, which is rural affordable housing and community-led housing opportunities. And I would like at this point to introduce and welcome James Shutt. who
Thank
is
you.
going to take us through this report, which is going to be in 3 parts. Thank you.
Thank you. Yes, thank you for inviting us to this meeting to discuss rural affordable housing. My name is James Shutt, and I'm Senior Housing Development Officer at Epping Forest District Council. I'm here with my colleague Francisca Ebenike, the Housing Enabling Officer from the Council's Housing Development team, and we work on housing enabling, which is about seeking to facilitate the provision of new affordable housing in partnership with other organisations. We're making a joint presentation this evening with our 2 key rural housing partners, the RCCE and Hastow Housing Association. And we have Laura Atkinson, who's the Housing Enabler and Community-Led Housing Advisor for RCCE with us, as well as Sophie Robinson, Development Manager, and Isabel Wright, Regional Development Manager for the Hastow Housing Association. We're particularly going to focus on rural exception sites and community-led housing this evening, and how we want to work in partnership with the parish councils to promote rural affordable housing and to seek new affordable housing initiatives in the district. That was the first slide. Jumped ahead a bit there. The second slide, I'm going to look at the Epping Forest local plan submission version, which covers the period 2011 to 2033. And you're probably all familiar with this plan. The plan is due to be adopted this year and sets out plans for 11,400 new homes during the planned period, with around 10,000 homes still to be provided and delivered. Within this target, the aim is to provide 2,851 new affordable housing units as part of that provision. But also within the plan, there is also provision for rural exception sites, which is what I'm going to focus on this evening. Please move to the next slide. Thank you. As I say, most of the development sites within the local plan were already allocated, but there is provision for some windfall sites, including rural exception sites. And that's what we're going to talk about now. Well, I've provided you here on this slide with a definition set out in the local plan under policy H3 of what constitutes a rural exception site. And that's defined as planning permission that may be granted for small-scale affordable housing schemes which are related to smaller settlements where planning permission for housing development will not be granted. And the plan also gives more details on the criteria which constitute rural exception sites and apply to rural exception sites. And the first one is that to put forward a site, it needs to be demonstrated there's a social or economic need for affordable housing for local people within the parish. And that's demonstrated through a local housing needs assessment. And I know Laura will go on to talk more about that in detail. Also, any development needs to be well related to the existing local settlement and be of no detriment to the character of nearby settlements or the countryside. And the final key point is that suitable arrangements need to be made to secure affordable housing for local residents in perpetuity. And that's one thing that differentiates rural exception sites from general developments and affordable housing in general in the district, in that the criteria for applying for housing through a rural exception site are defined by people living in the local area or working in the local area, i.e. within the parish. And that's basically the rural exceptions policy. So Laura will go on to talk in more detail about rural exception sites and also Hastow Housing Association as well. But I just wanted to give you a quick overview of the policy and the reason why we're here this evening to discuss these issues. So I don't know if anyone wants to ask any questions before we move on to the next section. Councillor Pond?
Thank you. Yes. How is rural defined? I spent some of today in Debden Green, which is a rural hamlet within the otherwise urbanised parish of Loughton. And it occurs to me that Waltham Abbey has quite a number of areas which could be described as rural, as well as some which could be described as very urban. So is this by parish or is there some other criteria?
Well, the main criterion we use is that it's a settlement of less than 3,000 people. And it's a very good point because you do have, as you quite rightly point out, some primarily urban parish councils which will cover rural areas, sort of hamlets and small villages. So I think they do apply. So that's why it is also an issue for town councils as well, because they may have
Thank you.
say hamlets and villages which may have a housing need that needs to be addressed. Councillor Lee.
Thank you. Are they still affected the same with this rural England thing? If you've got, I mean, we've got quite a few small hamlets around Waltham Abbey and Nazen and that. So are these sort of treated the same as anyone trying to build something with a stop on rural England? How does that work?
Yeah, I'm not quite sure what you're referring to. I'm sorry, in terms of the Rural England initiative.
Oh, well, where's Nigel? I saw Nigel. Yeah, no, it's just that housing's being held up, something to do with rural England.
Sorry, I think you mean natural England, don't you?
Oh, sorry.
You're talking about the impact on the forest with the air quality.
Yeah, Nigel, sorry about that.
Yeah, that's okay. I mean, these will still need to do some kind of appropriate assessment, these sites as well, because yes, you're right. They could impact on the forest. So we'd have to look at that as part of any planning application that comes in. But the local plan does accept a number of windfall sites. So yeah, I wouldn't say they're exempt from that. We'd have to consider that.
Oh, right. Thanks, Nigel. Thank you.
I've got another question from another councillor from Luton Town Council.
I've had to use my physical hand because there doesn't seem to be the option to use the blue hand for some reason. Yeah, my question, I think in the slide, that the last one that you showed, there was reference to no detriment to the character of the area. Does that mean a certain type of design for these houses in rural areas, so to reflect the sort of what's already there now, the sort of vernacular buildings which are in the countryside?
Yes, I think so. It's not actually specified in the local plan how that would work, but I think that's one of the sort of issues that would have a sort of it would complement and have a sort of minimal impact on the settlement. And as Laura and colleagues from Hastow will go on to talk about, these developments tend to be small in scale. So again, and you're really looking at sort of infill developments and that kind of thing, which is will either sort of be within the vernacular style, or certainly will sort of complement the style of the village and take that into account.
I continue on with the presentation, James?
I think so. Is there any more questions? I think that'll be fine. Okay, thank you.
So thank you very much. I'm Laura Atkinson. I'm the Rural Housing Enabler with the Rural Community Council of Essex. We're an independent charity and we've been established since 1929. And we were set up to help rural communities achieve a thriving and sustainable future. I work across Essex with lots of different local authorities and communities. And we address issues such as social isolation. We have a project for supporting village halls. But my particular focus is to look at the shortage of affordable housing in rural areas and support rural exception site development where there is a will to do so locally. We recognise that high land prices and high house prices and the abundance of larger homes in rural areas means that those on lower incomes are unable to stay within their communities. Our experience tells us that a small scheme of affordable homes, as the one James mentioned, can not only support the families in rural communities, but also those that work and have businesses there. And this applies to both first-time buyers, those who are still living with their parents, unable to get their foot on the ladder, as well as those later in life who perhaps have a home now that is slightly too large for them and want to downsize, but still remain and contribute to the community that they've lived in. These sorts of projects actually link really well to the role of local councils in identifying and supporting the needs of their communities. And it's important to reassure here that the process of assessing housing need in your parish at a local level is not in conflict with the planning obligations you have as a council. And in fact, often parish councils come back to us to review their housing need shortly after a scheme is completed, as the scheme was so successful. And at the advent of the scheme, people realise actually how great it can be. The demand was more than anticipated. My role as rural housing enabler is really to act as an independent advisor, linking communities, local authorities and other partners such as housing associations, which is why we work closely with HASTO. We believe that community engagement is absolutely paramount, and as these schemes are typically very small, they really do allow small rural communities to develop in a very manageable way according to the need that has been identified. And I've put a few pictures of some of the recent schemes that we've done in Essex. We do have a practical guide for parish councils on rural affordable housing, which was written by the Rural Housing Alliance. And although this is currently being updated, if you did want me to send you a copy, I'm more than happy to do so. It's very thorough. And I must stress is that the parish council is really in control of this whole process, and they drive the process. We don't operate without the consent of the parish council. We're happy to attend parish council meetings, attend community consultation events, and help with things like site finding and site selection. I just wanted to do a quick refresh on what is affordable housing. There have been some new models that have come in recently. We use the National Planning Policy Framework definition, which is houses for sale or rent for those whose needs are not met by the market. So we have the rent side, which is the social rent, which can be 40 to 60% of market rent, and the affordable rent side, which is 80% of market rent. And these are typically managed through a housing association or local authority. And you have the sale side, which is the side for shared ownership. So this is where the resident would part rent and part buy with a housing association. And also the discounted market sale, where a property is sold on the open market with a discount of at least 20% of the market value, but that discount is held in perpetuity when it's sold on to keep the affordability. And these are the typical types of a tenure that you would find on a rural exception site. So as James mentioned, the rural exception sites, where can these homes be built and how many? So an exception site is a plot of land that does meet the development boundary or is close to the development boundary. And these are really exceptions to the sites detailed in the local plan. They're only applicable to parishes and hamlets of less than 3,000 residents. And the development on these sites will be restricted to the size and tenure that's identified in the housing needs survey. It can't be large scale, it can't be anything more than the community expresses what they need to continue sustaining their community. Open market housing is permitted on rural exception sites, but it is really only to cross-subsidise the affordable on that site. So how do we know our village needs the affordable housing? As James mentioned, we would undertake a housing needs survey, and this is something that I would work with the parish council to do. We design the communications to the community and also the survey. The survey is usually a standard accepted form of evidence, so we tend not to tweak it too much, but we can add a couple of bits in if they are relevant to that particular parish. The questionnaire gets distributed to every household, so everybody gets the opportunity to state their support and their need for alternative housing within that parish. Once that data is collected and analysed, a report is produced giving parish-specific recommendations, and it's these recommendations that the housing association will use and that also are required by the planning team for the planning application. We recognise these days that paper surveys obviously seem a bit outdated. We do offer the online survey as well, but we feel that everybody should have a paper copy because you never know somebody's circumstance, whether they'd be able to go online at all. A question I often get asked actually is, how can we be sure the homes will be prioritised for local people? And this is where a Section 106 agreement is the safeguard. And this is a legally binding agreement on the land, which means that the local connection and the affordability and perpetuity are locked in to that land and to that development. So the houses will always go as a priority to people with a local connection, which means they live in the parish or have done for a certain number of years, and it does vary by different districts. That they used to live in the parish but had to move away. They have close family living in the parish at that time, or they are employed full-time in the parish. This Section 106 agreement also ensures that the homes stay affordable in perpetuity. So the rented homes, you cannot buy them outright, and the shared ownership owners can only staircase or purchase a maximum of 80% of their house. And this stops the house going into full open market and being bought by somebody without a local connection. As you can imagine, partnerships are essential for bringing forward a successful scheme. We work closely with parish councils, and we really see them as the driving force behind these schemes. The parish councillors bring important knowledge to this exercise, particularly with regards to land and the appropriate engagement opportunities that are required to make sure that everybody has their say. Land for rural housing comes from a variety of sources, and it can come from individuals or families, as well as farmers, parish or district councils, or large estates. And it's really important that the right piece of land is found, and that local residents are asked their opinion. And this actually starts on the housing needs survey, where residents are asked to contribute an idea as to where it might be best to develop. And that goes all the way through then into the site finding, where the parish council is integrally involved in that process. The local authority obviously is vital to discuss the plans with them, because the planning department will be crucial to get their thoughts on any potential sites to make sure that they are suitable and would eventually get planning should the scheme come to fruition. What I would say is that after the housing needs survey has been done, there is no commitment to pursue a housing needs survey, to pursue a scheme, to pursue a rural exception site. The first step is to identify the need. If there is a need, then the parish council, we really look to them to do what's right for their community. If there is no need, then there's no need for a scheme to come forward. Last, but by no means least, the housing association are obviously absolutely integral to the process, because not only do they finance and deliver and manage the properties, they also provide expert technical and legal support, as well as architects and undertaking viability assessments. Hasto are Epping Forest's partner of choice for rural specialist housing. And so I'm now going to hand over to Sophie Robinson from Hasto to explain their role in bringing forward these schemes.
Thanks, Laura. So I'm Sophie, I'm Development Manager for Hasto Housing Association. Just to give a bit of a background on Hasto, we're a registered provider, but we do specialise in rural housing. So we work very differently to a lot of the bigger housing associations. And rural housing is really our bread and butter. Hasto was established in 1962. We are, as Laura said, we're the preferred rural partner for Epping. We have over 7,500 homes across over 75 local authority areas. Our office in the east is based just outside Saffron Walden. We also have an office down in Dorchester. So we cover a very wide area. We generally develop schemes to above standard building regulations. We have some passive house schemes and other sort of levels in between, if you like. We do like to build to a high sustainability level. And to help create communities. So I just wanted to talk you through a few of our schemes. So this is the most recent scheme that's achieved planning permission. This is in High Easter, which is sort of just outside your district in Uttlesford. There's already a scheme in the village. It's not one of Hastow's, but there was a high housing need. That was quite a large scheme, and the parish council were keen to provide or to undertake an additional survey to see whether there was still need, and there was. We were very lucky to have 2 willing landowners to bring forward to help bring forward the site. It was only for 4 houses. That was what the need was at the time. We did have a conversation about tenure, but in the end, there are 4 houses for social rent. We did manage to achieve social grant from Homes England for social rent on these ones, which was really good, because obviously it makes them more affordable for the people that are living in them. We carried out 2 consultation events back in the day when you could have consultation events. There was a lot of local support, a lot of people interested in the housing, which is really good, because that just kind of sets in stone the fact that there is a need. And we're due to start on site by before the end of the month, and there's just a little picture of what the scheme, what the design was on that one, to give you a flavour. And I'll just take you through a few of our schemes and how much they can vary in size, etc. So the most recent exception site we did in Epping Forest was completed in January 2011, so 10 years old now. We worked closely with the parish council on this one. It was in Abbas Rodin. It consisted of 6 properties, a mix. So we developed a mix of 2 1-bedroom flats, 2 3-bedroom houses, and 2-bedroom houses and a bungalow. And as you can see, the mix was a mix of shared ownership and rent on that one. Little Hanningbury is probably one of our biggest schemes. So this was 16 units. Again, provided a mix of rent and shared ownership to meet the housing need. Another bungalow, which on the larger sites does seem to be we do seem to get a need for bungalows, which is good as well, because it shows that there's a variety within the parishes. So this scheme started on site in September 2016 and was completed in January 2018, and that's been a very successful scheme. Moat Field in Hatfield Heath, which is another Uttlesford scheme. So this was 14 homes. Again, a mixture of flats and houses, and rent and shared ownership. This one was built to passive house standards, and the landowner, the parish council asked the landowner whether or not they would be able to provide some land for allotments for the parish as well. So they had an agreement with the landowner that they would have that on a long-term lease, which is good, and they're really popular, and they're really well used, actually. So it just shows you what can be done. And again, this scheme finished in February 2015. This scheme in Colchester, so this was just 2 homes. So one of probably our smallest scheme, 2 houses for rent. This was built at the time to Sustainable Homes Level 4, which was kind of the level that we were building at that time. And we used air source heat pumps on this one because there was no gas in the village, so that lowered the energy costs for the occupants. And now I'll pass back to Laura.
Thank you, Sophie. Thank you. Another way of delivering affordable housing in rural areas and in urban, actually, is through community-led housing. And I just wanted to touch on this to give you some options, really. Community-led housing is housing which is built or brought back into use by local people, and it helps communities solve their own housing issues and provide high quality innovative homes. It demonstrates alternative ways of living with a positive impact on well-being, and covers a range of different ways that people can look at their own need and build to what they want. It also encourages collaboration and cooperation between local people. The homes that are built this way are owned and managed by the local people. Sometimes they don't necessarily have to be. I think there's a huge spectrum of how communities get involved in these projects, but their benefits do get protected forever for that particular community. Community-led housing can also lead to other things other than housing. It can lead to community-owned assets, such as shops and pubs, potentially. So can build on local skills and employment. I've set out some popular models of community-led housing here, but really you can have a blend of all of these. Some schemes are particularly innovative across the country. Perhaps the most popular of these is the Community Land Trust, and this is a not-for-profit community-controlled organisation that can own and develop land for housing and for other community uses. You've got co-housing, which is intentional community where people create their own community around a certain value. It's an intentional community, and it is usually private dwellings which are built around shared communal facilities. Housing cooperatives are ways that tenants can democratically control the management and or the development of their home. So effectively, the tenants become their own landlord. Self-build and custom-build projects are really just that. So where communities come together and build their own home, but you don't necessarily need to be the one to actually build it. You can just manage that process much more closely. Self-finish and custom build really build on the element of choice, choosing from a menu of options from a certain developer, and self-finish allows people to cash in on the sweat equity, so finishing homes themselves to bring the affordability of building those homes down. Self-help housing is where empty homes are restored, and this can typically be in more urban areas where there are opportunities for training and volunteering, which often leads to lifelong employment, as well as creating your own home. I'm now going to just pass over to Isabel Wright from Hasto to talk about a CLT, or Community Land Trust, that was a topic that Hasto were integral in bringing forward.
This is the second one.
Thanks, Laura. Yeah, just to give you a little bit of background on Lavenham, we initially did a small rural exception site with the parish council there back in 2010, which was 7 units. Following on from that, it was really popular. The parish were quite keen to establish if there was a need for further housing, and they also wanted to progress their neighbourhood plan. So through that process, it became clear there was definitely more need for more affordable housing within the parish. And equally, the parish were very ambitious and very keen to look at alternative ways of delivering that. So they actually went ahead and formed a CLT and asked us to sort of come along with them in partnership, which we have done. Basically, the site that we managed, or the CLT actually managed to secure, was the former gritting depot, and the CLT were integral in managing to secure that. I don't think we would have, as a housing association, been able to secure it. They managed to actually get it for £1. The site was a bit of a challenge, I must admit. It was still very much an old gritting depot. It was fully concreted. There was contamination, and there was buildings on site, so we had to go through and demolish all of those and make the site workable. basically how it works on that particular scheme is the CLT own the freehold of the site. Hasto have a long lease, and we pay them an annual ground rent for the lease. And we own and manage the properties on site, which were completed back in October 2020. And it is basically an exception site by another name, but it is local needs housing. We own and manage the properties, but the CLT own the land.
Thank you, Isabel.
And then there's just a quote, which is from one of the residents at Lavenham, and I think I won't read it out, but I think it just shows how important this local needs housing is for people within the parish, and just what it does for people. So I'll let you all read that.
So just to continue on from the example of Lavenham as a community land trust, I just wanted to show you Cannock Mill, which is a co-housing scheme in Colchester. This mutually supportive co-housing group came together under their shared value of living lightly, and they came as a group together to purchase the plot, and they built low energy, environmentally friendly homes to passive house standards. They essentially built 23 new homes in the end, but shared around this common house. So they have individual homes, but they have a sense of communal living. And they, this type of development really helps with issues such as social isolation, particularly in the pandemic. And I've heard the residents speak from Cannock Mill recently around what a great sense of community it's been and how welcome it's been because of the recent pandemic, which is great. And there are other schemes like this. For example, Ouch in High Barnet in London, which is the older women's co-housing. Lilac in Leeds, they also have come together around low impact living and created a mutual home ownership scheme for co-housing. And it's just a few examples of what can be achieved when communities really take charge. So Eastern Community Homes is a not-for-profit hub aiming to increase the supply of community-led housing and support community-led housing groups in the east of England. I am a community-led housing advisor through RCCE for Eastern Community Homes. And if community-led housing is something that interests you and your parish, do come and talk to me, and let's have a discussion about what you might be able to achieve. The government has announced a 4 million grant funding for community-led projects, which shows their commitment to fund projects like this. And although the 4 million potentially won't go very far because of the amount of projects going on nationwide, actually it does show a really great intent by the government, and we're hopeful that in the next spending review, there might be some more grant funding to really kickstart projects like this. Finally, I just wanted to mention neighbourhood planning. A lot of these aspirations for rural affordable housing, for reception sites and for community-led housing come out in the engagement process for neighbourhood planning. So I wanted to highlight the support that's available for your parishes if you decide to undertake a neighbourhood plan. We have engagement officers at RCCE which will provide support to you with all sorts of things relating to training and the whole process from start to finish. What I would say is you wouldn't want to allocate a rural exception site or allocate land for a community-led housing project within your neighbourhood plan, but creating an aspiration and including it as an action plan or an aspiration is absolutely, can be very helpful in the future. So that's it, that's me. If you have any questions at all or would like us to attend your next parish council meeting, let me know. Obviously, I'll take any general questions now, but if you have any specific questions relating to your context, perhaps we could, speak at your next meeting. So I'm going to stop sharing now and stop talking and ask for any questions.
Thank you very much, the whole team. And any questions, members?
Chairman, can you?
Yes, Sheila Jackman, please.
I suppose I should declare an interest because I used to work for Hasto, but I was at the opening of the scheme at Lavenham and the one in Abbas Roding. And what I really wanted to know, we did rely a lot at that time on farmers giving land, and I'm just wondering whether you could let us know whether you still have success in persuading farmers to give peripheral land that mixes in with the village. And could I just also add, standard of build of Hasto housing in the villages was extremely high. And that's something that impressed me greatly. They don't build rubbish, you need to know. And I was very impressed with the standard of build and the quality of, and I can understand why your residents are so pleased and give you such good plaudits for, their new homes. Excellent, well done.
Thank you. Yeah, just quickly to answer your question about farmers making land available. Yes, it's harder than it probably was 5-10 years ago. But yes, there are still farmers that are willing to let land go if they're, if they can't do anything else with it, they are willing to talk to us. It isn't as straightforward as it used to be. I must admit, it's not as easy now because a lot of people have aspirations that they'll be able to get open market on a site, and some farmers would rather sit on it. But yeah, it is very much still the bread and butter of what we do would be farmers, predominantly the landowners that we deal with.
Excellent, good. Carry on, good work.
Thank you.
I cannot see any other hands. Councillor Lee.
Yeah, it was Laura said about a little booklet or something. Is it possible to have one sent? I'd be quite interested to look into it more.
Yes, absolutely. I'm not sure how I get your contact details, but perhaps my details could be passed to everybody at the meeting. Is that all right? Thank you, Rebecca's nodding. Yes, thank you.
Okay, thank you.
And then you can contact me and I'll absolutely send you more information, and I'm more than happy to have a conversation offline about how we can support you, and what you want to achieve.
Thank you.
Any other members? Yes, Councillor Wixley.
Yeah, thank you, Chairman. Yeah, I'd just like some clarification to make sure I've understood this correctly. But the shared ownership, I think you said 80%, and I'm is this linked up with another phrase which I picked up, which says forever legally protected? Are the two linked? Because what I just wondered if I'm thinking about this correctly, if the maximum of one of these houses you can buy is 80%, I just wonder if that was restrictive in some way and that it could only be sold or passed on to somebody else within that area. And if, for instance, somebody had one of these houses and they were offered a job a long distance away and they wanted to sell quickly to move, I wonder if that would sort of be restrictive in any way.
Yeah, so they're tied through, as Laura mentioned, the Section 106 agreement via the planning process. So that's what fixes the local connection criteria. And then also, so they are capped at 80%, so the maximum they can purchase is 80. So yes, if someone does want to sell on, they do have to sell to somebody else that fulfills the criteria. That's the whole point of the product, basically.
Okay. Anyone else?
Can I add to that? I think it's useful to understand in that context that they will work very closely with the housing association. It's not something they will do on their own. There will be the support within the housing association, obviously, to facilitate how they sell those units and the process, because it can be very difficult, particularly if you want to get out quickly. So there is support there. They're not going to be abandoned, to get on with it.
Okay, thank you very much. I don't think we have any members. In this case, I will thank you again, the whole team from Rural Community Council of Essex, from, of course, a Hastow group. And we are very polite here. We just say if you would like to continue with the meeting, you're very welcome to stay. But if you would like to depart, we understand and we wish you a good evening. So it is up to you entirely. Members.
Thank you very much. Thank you for
Thank
having
you.
me.
Thanks.
Thanks. Bye.
You're
Bye.
very welcome. So members, we're going to item 5, and these are the issues raised by local councils. So we're really here to discuss these issues. And we start with Epping Forest District Council local plan progress report. May I ask Nigel Richardson, please?
Yes, thank you, Chairman. Well, to be absolutely honest, there's not an awful lot of progress update on the local plan. It just seems to be going on forever and ever. And but just to give you a bit of a background, following the hearing sessions from, if you recall, the independent examination of the local plan, the inspector released her advice back in August 2019. And within her advice, she set out a number of changes to the plan, which are required to remedy issues of soundness in the form of main modifications, MMs as we call them. So in accordance with the high-level programme of the Council's response to the inspector, dated when was that, April 2020, the team did ensure that a final tranche of main modifications was submitted to the inspection in September, with a view to consultation taking place possibly soon after. Unfortunately, the inspector notified us back in October that she had some other work commitments involving another examination hearing that took place towards in October, November of last year, and therefore we wouldn't be getting a response. We did get, she did provide an update in February this year, but that update basically said that she advised the volume and complexity of the documents meant that the progress of finalising these main modifications is taking some time, and it's not helped by the lockdown measures, which have unfortunately also prolonged it. So we're waiting for our next steps shortly. I mean, in terms of the question you're probably going to ask is, when are we going to get an adopted local plan over the line? Well, I think the answer is it will be this year, but once she's looked at the main modifications, we do have to go out to consultation. And I think that consultation probably won't take place now until June time. But remember, the local plan is now with the inspector. It's her local plan at the moment, and we are in her hands. So there will be some consultation on the main modifications we've put to her. I can't share that with you at the moment because they could be subject to change from the inspector itself. So yeah, so basically that's where we stand with the local plan. And Chairman, I'm happy to take any questions.
Yes.
I'm sorry there isn't more of an update than that.
That's all right. Thank you very much. I have two members, Councillor Chris Bond and Councillor Byrne from Clayton Boys. I've been informed that she would like to actually ask a specific question. So first, Chris Bond, please.
Yeah, thank you, Chairman. It is sometimes done, I think, isn't it, Nigel, that there's a further series, often a short series, of examination in public following the consultation on the MMs. What's your estimate? Is that likely, or do you think it's something that...
Really don't know yet. Let's see what the inspector says with their MMs. I can't really answer that one, unfortunately. Sorry.
My point simply was that the whole thing may well be driven out of this year if there has to be a further series of examination in public.
Yeah, I mean that possibly, but I'm pretty confident we'll get the local plan over the line this year.
Councillor Byrne. Yeah,
sorry. One other thing I was going to ask, obviously, I tuned in, as I'm sure many people did, to the discussion around the air quality mitigation strategy. And I seem to remember the timing of that was that the portfolio holder was to put together an advisory group.
Right, well, come on. That's the next item on the agenda.
I'll let you do that instead. Go ahead. Thank you.
Please, Nigel, we go to interim air pollution mitigation strategy to advise and clarify on clean air zone.
Okay.
Nigel, please. Thank you.
Yeah, be one on it. I'm just dragging something across to run through. Sorry, be 1 minute. I've got about 5 different things up at the moment. Now I've dragged it across to another screen. I've got to squint to look at it. So bear with me a minute. Yeah, so basically, in terms of the air pollution mitigation strategy, as I said, I've explained the situation with the local plan. So we put a report to Cabinet back in 2020 last year, which set out the approach to managing the effects of air pollution and the potential mitigation measures, and consultation with Natural England and the Conservators of Epping Forest. So Natural England came back to us back in December that the strategy, this air pollution mitigation strategy, contained measures that would manage and mitigate the effects of the new development on the Epping Forest Special Area of Conservation. There was then a full council meeting that looked at the air pollution mitigation strategy after a portfolio audit report had been produced. And at that full council meeting, which was an extraordinary meeting, it was declared that to determine the planning applications only on the basis of law, and of course law would include the National Planning Policy Framework and other planning guidance, as well as the latest version of the new local plan. But also importantly, that the Cabinet members for Planning and Sustainability, Cabinet Member for Planning and Sustainability, which is Councillor Nigel Bedford, would form a cross-party portfolio holder advisory group. We have had an initial meeting of that group. It was generally an introductory meeting. Councillor Pond, for example, is one of the members of that advisory group, and the group basically is formed to support the portfolio holder in the delivery of the interim air pollution mitigation strategy, and also provide the oversight of the work of some of the technical stakeholder groups. So this could include working with officers to identify further initiatives that weren't actually included in the air pollution mitigation strategy, and also could be brought forward to advance air quality improvements. And I think the intention of that group is to try and remove the need for the introduction of a clean air zone, which there's obviously, as you're probably well aware, there's been a lot of local interest in that. And so that's one of the driving forces behind this group. So that's the situation we're at the moment. We've had, like I said, we've had that initial meeting. There's another meeting due to take place, and this is, as I say, is a cross-party group. And then we'll review everything. We'll have a look at what's put forward, and as I said, the intention is to try and avoid having a clean air zone, which is identified as one of the mitigation factors in the air pollution mitigation strategy. I think, Chairman, I'll leave it there, but yeah, happy to take any questions on that.
Okay, Councillor Byrne.
I didn't put my hand up, but I was maybe thinking it. At some point, and whatever is the correct procedure, it might be quite nice to know if you have confirmed the members, if they're happy for the membership of that committee to go into the public domain, in case, as I suspect, that some of those residents within their wards would like to ask questions. I'm just thinking at this stage, if they want to ask further questions before you get to the main modifications, who does one come to? Who do you speak to if you want to ask about it? Because obviously there was a certain amount of information floating around, and sometimes perhaps a little bit of misinformation. And I don't want to mention that there is an election, but it does seem that I'm getting a lot of leaflets through my door, and my perception of what I think was said and what my recollection was is a little different from what goes into a campaign leaflet. So I think getting the factual elements right is important for anybody who wishes to inquire further. Thank you.
Nigel, would you like to answer this?
Yeah, I mean, that's a good point. I can't remember off the top of my head who the councillors are on that group. I think Councillor Heap's on the call as well. And I know Councillor Whitehouse, John Whitehouse, was on that. So my suggestion is that perhaps you contact your local councillor. I mean, remember the intention of this group is to bring forward ideas. So that will be my suggestion. I think Councillor Heap's got his hand up as well.
Yes,
Councillor
yes,
King.
thank you. Councillor Heap, please.
Thank you, Chairman. I would have no problem with any of it going into the public domain whatsoever as a member of the committee. We're not there specifically to remove the clean air zone. That's part and parcel of it, maybe, possibly.
Yeah.
It's to look at the whole picture to try and lower the whole impact of everything that we do in the area. So that could also mean maybe trying to encourage people not to have gas boilers, for instance, or trying to do something with the M25. It's not specifically just to remove the clean air zone, because that is a thing that has been suggested. And as far as I understand, Natural England are still expecting that to be in the local plan, or a wording of it in the local plan, in order to give the permissions that are waiting right at this moment. So it's an interim permission that you're giving, but they're still expecting it to be part of the plan. Or is that incorrect?
I think Natural England are expecting that, but we're not ruling out possibility of other mitigation factors. So I would, whatever we do, we would have to consult with Natural England in any case.
Thank you.
Councillor Whitbread, you are mute.
You always say the best things when you're on mute. But Chairman, the whole endeavour of this is to try and do everything we can to mitigate against having a CAS. And I think we have to be very clear about that. It will be a failure of mitigation strategies if we end up with a CAS through the forest. And certainly that's not what any of my members are working towards. We're doing everything we can to avoid one. In fact, it was at the Essex County Council meeting where the Liberal Democrats brought forward a council tax increase in order to try and implement CASs in hotspots across Essex. And so personally, I'm against having a CAS, and I'll do everything I can and work as much as I can to mitigate against that. Yes, we have to do it in consultation with Natural England and protect the forest, but I don't see any great desire amongst residents. It affects the most poorest people in our communities to end up with a CAS, and we're certainly going to be working very, very hard to avoid one. Thanks, Chairman.
Thank you. I cannot see any other hands. Right. We continue with item C, update on the elections planning process for the elections being held 6 May 2021. Louise Wade, perhaps you can take that for us.
Thank you, Chair. Good evening, everyone. I just wanted to give you an overview tonight on the elections preparations. The polling stations, a total of 63 polling stations are being used for these elections, and we've now had confirmation of all of them. There was a possible issue with Murray Hall in Borders Lane, Loughton, but this has now been resolved following a very productive and supportive conversation with the NHS, where we are able to use the polling station for the day. And I'd just like to clarify that we've also received confirmation there will be no reduction in vaccinations for local people as a result of us using the site on that day. Extensive planning, information gathering and discussions continue to take place in order to ensure that we're protecting our residents' health and minimising the risk of coronavirus transmission. The team of officers have pulled together a robust risk assessment, ensuring necessary safety measures are in place and that voting is both secure and as efficient as possible. I'm just going to run through some of the specific aspects. In terms of postal votes are available for any elector at these elections, provided they apply in time. The last date for the postal vote application is to be received at 5 p.m. on the 20th of April. Postal votes will be issued from the 21st. Details of how voters could apply for a postal vote will be detailed on polling cards, or voters can access the information available to them on the Electoral Commission website. Communications have been released by the County Council and individual political parties regarding the postal votes, and further communication will be released when the poll cards are delivered. Social distancing and other safety measures will be in operation in the polling stations, and depending on the size of the polling stations, they will either operate a one-way system or a one-in, one-out system, which will be operated by the presiding officers. In addition, pencils will not be tied to the polling booths. Voters will be encouraged to bring their own pen or pencil to the polling station. However, if a voter requires a pencil, then they will be provided with one by the station staff. Any queues at the polling stations will be marshalled by staff, and staff will also be regularly cleaning touch points within the station throughout the day. Where appropriate, screens will also be used. The Count Centre this year will be held at a hangar at Northfield Airfield. Now, whilst individuals may need to wrap up to attend the site, the scale of the count this year really requires us to have a large facility. In terms of schedule, the schedule will be as follows. On Thursday, the 6th of May at 10 o'clock, full verification of ballot boxes. Friday, the 7th of May, 9:30 a.m, county council divisions, district council wards and town parish council wards. And then on Saturday, the 8th of May at 9:30, the Police, Fire and Crime Commissioner and any outstanding town and parish council wards. In order to ensure we continue to maintain the necessary safety measures, admittance to the hangar will be strictly controlled for each of the counts, and if attendees do not have a ticket, then they will not be able to be admitted. On the Friday, the hangar will be cleared after the county council divisions have been counted, so that only the people with a valid ticket for district and local councils can be admitted. The returning officer has determined that to ensure we're providing a safe environment and minimising transmission, invitations to the count will be limited to the candidate's agent, and one count agent per candidate. Hand sanitizer will be available at every entrance and exit, and attendees will be expected to use it whenever they're entering the hangar. Marshals will also be available on duty to ensure that social distancing is maintained. Other additional points to note is that the confirmation of the polling stations, the data for the polling cards have now been sent to the printers, and these will be posted out shortly, and that a candidates and agents briefing will take place on Monday, the 12th of April at 6 p.m. via Zoom. Thank you, Chair.
Thank you very much. Councillor Heap, you have your hand up. I think it's from a previous question. Yes, okay. Councillor Sheila Blackman, please.
Will the press be allowed to go to the count?
There will be limited attendance, but we're just working with our communication and PR team to actually understand exactly who will be permitted as part of that.
Right, thank you.
Any other member? No. Okay. Item D, Epping Forest District Council training schedule and prospectus for 2021-2022. I would ask Gary Woodhull for that.
Thank you, Chairman. The members training programme has been put together for 21-22. There has been dates agreed because I've got some of the courses in my diary now. What we don't quite know at the moment is how many of these courses are going to be, as they were before, physical courses, or how many are going to be virtual, held over Zoom or Microsoft Teams. So that is probably why the schedule hasn't been distributed to members as yet. As we get closer towards May and the elections, we will have a better idea of how the pandemic is going and whether the roadmap is being adhered to, and we can start making decisions then over having either physical or virtual training courses.
And of course, it is important for some town councils. Council says that there will be some new councillors, into this elected, so they will be needed. The code of conduct, planning, training, etc.
Yeah, half of the town and parish councils are up for election this year. So yes, there will be a number of new members that would want that training. So
yes, of course. Members, any questions, remarks? No. Okay. Item 6 is any other business. No other business. Dates for future meetings. Right, we have 2 dates here. We have Monday the 27th of September 2021 and Monday the 14th of March 2022. Please note these dates. With this note, I would like to thank everyone, as you might have a different chairman for these future meetings. This is our last one before the elections. I have really have enjoyed being your chair this year, even under completely unforeseeable circumstances. And I would like to thank my vice chair, Councillor Bond, for his support throughout these meetings. Councillor Sheila.
And I just thank you, Chairman, for your chairmanship of this committee, which is very useful to parish and town councils. So for you and Councillor Pond, many thanks.
You're very welcome. Thank you very much for your kind words. And with this, I close the meeting at 6 minutes past